The McLarens were in a different area code on Saturday, but Charles Leclerc with a lap of the gods at a track that's one of the hardest for him on the F1 calendar. Bags pole position for the Hungarian Grand Prix. I'm Tim Hauraney. This is Nailing the Apex. Let's get right into it. Q3 and changing track conditions. So that was a huge story with Q3 in this one. Windy, extreme wind that showed up for Q3, and that pretty much threw everyone's game plan who was in Q3 right out the window. You're going to hear me talk a lot about the wind and changing track conditions for this set, so let's get right into Charles Leclerc with that pole position lap of 1 minute 15.372 in a Ferrari that really has no business being on pole position. He said, quote, "Today is a day where I don't understand anything with the sport," following qualifying. He said that everything felt out of place in terms of the track, the car, where everybody was. He felt the car went backwards from at free practice 3 into qualifying. He didn't have a good feeling with the car when he got into qualifying, but Q3, the conditions changing, and he knew he just needed to put together a clean lap and get the lap absolutely right. I did go through his onboard camera. I mean, didn't make a ton of mistakes into turn 2. He really hustled the apex. That gave him quite a bit of understeer. He couldn't get back on the power soon enough. And then turns 6 and 7. So the first chicane that you come to on the lap, I'm taking a look at that as well. He had a bit of understeer heading towards turn 6, but he was able to strike the curb quite handedly in turn 7 and get away with it. And again, curb striking with this Ferrari has worked out very well for them so far this season. The car seems to handle it quite well when it strikes curbs or rides curbs. But for him, he said he was probably the most surprising pole position that he's ever done. Leclerc felt that they were going to struggle, though, when they got into qualifying and into Q3. Felt that maybe they could get into the top 5 in Q3, but he wasn't really sure about it. When he finished the lap and he said he felt it was worth P3, not pole position. So for him, it was a good surprise when his engineer Brian Bozzi came over the radio and gave him the message that he was P1. He did emphasize, though, again and again, just how bad the car felt from Q2 into Q3. And he felt that the upgrade, we should talk about that, the one that was brought to Spa, the rear suspension, the one that I've been talking a lot about on this podcast lately, has really helped them extract a bit more pace from the car. Now, when we get into the Q3 run, so his first one, we should talk about that, because what he did there is actually quite smart. Going out on a set of scrubbed soft tires, I think for him, that gave him, basically, it allowed him to understand how bad the car felt, if that makes any sense. Because when he went to throw on the new set of soft tires, there's obviously a huge difference in terms of feel, and how that gave him a better feeling because he opted to use the scrub set of softs in the first part of Q3. So naturally, that's going to give you a bit of more of a confidence boost when it comes to that. But for him to make that decision, really smart on his part, because basically, you go out and you're on that set of scrub softs and you're like, wow, this car feels horrible. I can't do really much with it in this corner, this corner, this corner. You strap on the softs and then new softs, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh wow, there's more grip here, I can push here, I can now push here, and maybe I can overreach a bit here and get away with it. And when you do that as a driver, obviously your confidence builds as the lap sort of carries on, because the car is giving it back to you because of the new set of soft tires. I also like the way Leclerc has been handling the team lately more in a assertive manner and sort of putting his foot down on things that he needs the team to change or he doesn't like or what he wants in qualifying. You heard it in Q2 when he was ordering the team to send him out, and that is what, like, sent him out when there wasn't a lot of traffic. He wanted to be put in a certain queue so that he could have the space that he wanted, but that's him putting his stamp on his side of the garage, and it is paying off for him. I think this is probably the best I've seen Charles Leclerc ever, and I'm super happy for the guy that he was able to get pole position at this track on Saturday. Now, for Sunday, if it rains, he said that it's going to be easier for cars to overtake. I think for him, he felt that if it does rain, he's in a good position to navigate that by being the leader. So for him, the full focus will be on trying to hold on to his position. Now, if it's dry and he's able to, let's say, hold off Piastri or Norris, or maybe both, on the opening lap, I think Charles Leclerc could be in line for the win here because it is tricky to pass, but he's going to have to be strategic with how he handles the tire and the tire degradation. So, maybe he goes slow in sector 2 and he backs Piastri up into Norris, and then he uses the tire in the final sector, maybe in the final 2 corners, to get a good run down the start-finish straightaway to try and pull away a bit and avoid being overtaken by the DRS of either McLaren driver. So when you look at it from that perspective, could be an interesting strategy call from himself inside the car. I mean, again, if he just summons back up whatever he did in Spa and recreates it here, I mean, he could be in line for the victory on Sunday. So it's going to be a very exciting race, everybody. I do encourage you to tune in to watch this one because it will be pretty awesome. Oscar Piastri finishing P2, qualifying P2. He's on the front row with a 1 minute 15.398. That's how close it was between himself and Charles Leclerc. The changing conditions were a big issue for McLaren with the wind directions. He felt Piastri, like he did a good job. His second lap, he felt that that was going to be actually a really good lap. But then when he actually saw the time, he realized how bad it was. He just really couldn't believe it. He did say that things felt really tricky in Q3 with the windy conditions. Lost half a second from Q2 to Q3, he said. His first lap in Q3, like I said, he wasn't that surprised how bad that one was. He was surprised how bad the second push lap was in Q3, though. So, when we take a look at Piastri over the weekend, the battle between him and Lando Norris has been super close, both of them. And when we look at their, race pace, again, both of them, very, very close. If you go back here a year ago, you'll remember how close it was that year as well, and McLaren basically having to order Norris to move over and give Piastri the position because Piastri had the lead of most of the race, and they wanted Oscar to get that win, and they felt he deserved it, and he did deserve it. Oscar led a lot of that race. So Piastri feels pretty confident for Sunday that he can win from P2 because of last year and how competitive he was, and him starting P2 last year as well. It'll be interesting to see how he navigates the start-finish straight, like I was saying earlier with Leclerc, and in particular off the start, because the start-finish straightaway and into turn 1, it's all been resurfaced. And it has a lot more grip there. So it'll be curious to see if he tries anything off the start into turn 1 for himself because of the amount of grip that's there. But again, that grip's going to help Charles Leclerc at the same time. P3 is Lando Norris. We'll talk about his race and what I think after we just go through some quick notes that I made. 1 minute 14.413 Lando pretty much said at the end of this one exactly what Oscar had said about Q2 to Q3, how bad the car felt in Q3, but said that, putting together a good lap in Q3 was actually really shocked at just how far off the pace they were compared to their times in Q2. But again, emphasizing that the wind for their car was horrible. And that's curious. That's interesting when you hear both McLaren drivers saying the exact same thing, but then you hear Charles Leclerc saying, like, yeah, the wind was bad, but hey, I was able to get pole position with it. I mean, you have to wonder why the Ferrari maybe had a easier time handling the wind, say, than the McLarens did. That'll be interesting for them to figure out and for us to learn more as the season moves along. For Norris on Sunday, he did make mention that their advantage is mostly going to be in Sunday's race. He did feel that Charles' race pace has been quite strong all weekend long, and Charles is one of the only drivers that's been able to keep pace with McLaren drivers for the past few races, and did sound a little concerned, but I'm mostly interested to see what Lando does with Oscar on the start. If Lando's able to get a good getaway, I'll be interested to see how much Lando forces the issue down the inside of turn 1. I really doubt Lando would try around the outside of turn 1. That never really works out for anyone at this track most of the time. So a couple strategies that he could probably do there. But I would definitely, if it was me, I'd definitely try and send one down the inside and just leave it up to Oscar what we do and what happens, because Oscar's obviously championship leader. So both of them have a lot to lose in that moment. So watch the McLarens off the start. That I think is going to be fascinating to see. I heard from McLaren team principal Andrea Stella. For him, his mindset coming into this one was locking out the front row with both McLaren cars. But the changing conditions, again, they paid a big price for. He also felt that the drivers were a bit cautious with their push laps. He was happy with where they ended up, though, but did say, they have a bit more work to do for tomorrow than what they had anticipated. Now, when you take a look at, and it's interesting when he says cautious by his two drivers and their approach, and, he's not wrong, because if you take a look at what George Russell did, who was fourth with a 1:14, 4:25, George was, I think he was only about a 10th. Don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure he was only about a 10th off of what his fastest lap time was in qualifying altogether. And if I pull this up here, so George with a 1:14, 4:25. Q2 was a 1:15, 2:01. So just over actually 2/10. Still, the gap between Piastri's time and let me see here. Let me pull. Yeah, Piastri's time to it's a huge delta from Piastri's Q2 time to Piastri's Q3 time. There's about 4/10 there, and George's is half that. So I would say that yes, I would agree with what Andrea Stella said about the cautious approach, because when we take a look at what George Russell did, very impressive lap from himself. I think he was a little perturbed only because he's about a 10th off of getting pole position. And yeah, I'd be frustrated with that too. But I think also, taking a look at the conditions and the risk that George took, you have to be happy with the outcome of that at the same time. George did make a few little errors on his final push lap in Q3. He felt that the track temperature change really helped them, because the track temperature did change in qualifying. It got cooler, which also helped a few other teams as well. But Mercedes made some, significant changes to their car coming into this weekend. Obviously, we've talked at length about Kimi Antonelli's, confidence issues over the last few races, the suspension change that Mercedes had done when they went with that surprising rear suspension change in Imola. They carried that over. They won in Canada. And the reason for that win in Canada and that suspension that they introduced in Imola, which hasn't worked out for them ever since Canada, it's been a sort of a downward spiral for them, is essentially because of the straight line braking that's in Canada. Not a lot of high-speed content, high-speed corners where there's a lot of lateral change, and the rear suspension being a bit tricky to navigate through those sections for the driver. But you've seen George be able to adapt to it, however, not able to extract all of the performance from the car because of the rear suspension. So what they did was Mercedes opted to go back to a very old suspension that they used this season, the one they used before Imola. And for George and for Kimi, it sounds like it's given them a bit more confidence in the car. However, the car is still a little slower for the race on Sunday. George doesn't feel he's going to be able to fight with the McLarens, and he is worried about the two Aston Martins behind him, which had a super qualifying. So I had said on Thursday, watch out for Aston Martin here, and sure enough, they didn't disappoint. P5 for Fernando Alonso with a 1:15.481. So we'll take you back to the beginning of the weekend for Fernando. Obviously, he's got a back injury, so he got hurt in Spa with he kind of called it a tear in his back muscle from his seat in his car, and his back sort of crunching up and rubbing up against it. Again, if you don't have these things super dialed in with your seat, I mean, you can really damage your ribs and stuff like that. Trust me, I know. So dealing with a back injury in a race car and you're trying to push is very, 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 very difficult. So he missed FP1 to get some treatment done on his back. Felipe Drogovic filled in. The FIA cleared Fernando. He went out for FP2, obviously in the car now for the race. But since FP1, the car has been competitive. The last row of the grid in Spa is where they were last weekend, now up to P5 and P6 for both drivers. Alonso said that the wind made the track slower for everyone, so nobody could really match their Q1 and Q2 times. But the characteristics of the track is what helped them. And how the wind, even though it was bothering some teams, for them, the track characteristics were just so suited for their car that it didn't sound like it really affected them all that much. And Alonso feels that if they can understand why this track suits their car, then they can take that information and they can take it into other races and start exploiting the car a lot more and learning it more, because it has been a really tricky car for both drivers to really wrap their heads around, even for the team as well. It's an up and down race car. You never know what you're going to get from it. Fernando did say, though, for tomorrow, it won't be easy in the race to hold on to both of their positions with Max Verstappen behind them and also Lewis Hamilton as well. He also mentioned, and I found this quite interesting, that the team's been really happy with the upgrades that they have brought so far. So they brought some decent sized updates so far this season. British Grand Prix being a big one, and then they brought some more into Spa, and then they brought a new front wing into Budapest, into Hungary here, and that front wing seems to be helping a little bit. But one of the things that they're seeing that they are very happy about is the correlation between their CFD machinery back at the factory, their wind tunnel back at the factory, and the circuit, and all of those things talking to each other, which is excellent to hear, because that's going to set them up for a good 2026, at least a strong 2026, especially when you have Adrian Newey working on your car and you have all of those tools speaking to each other. Then that's going to be a pretty positive outcome, I believe, for this team next season. Lance Stroll, P6. Very good qualifying from Lance. Good weekend from him all the way around. 1 minute, 1:15, 4:98, just 1/100th from missing out on out qualifying his teammate Fernando Alonso. That close. Alonso is just, oh my God, that guy's such a great qualifier. He's unbelievable. For Lance, he felt that the car was great to drive. He said he felt that he could finally, push the car, and he felt that they were all good laps. They had gone back and forth on some floors on their cars, but Lance felt that the track was just really suited to the Aston Martin. All they had to do was just crank on a lot of downforce onto the car, and the cooler conditions really helped them as well. For Lance, though, he thinks they can get something out of the race tomorrow. He said they felt that they can fight the Saubers and the Racing Bulls if they make their way forward. However, when you take a look at, the Mercedes and the McLarens and the Ferrari in front of them, he's not too sure about fighting those ones. So the goal for Aston Martin is going to try to consolidate P5, P6, or P6, P7, and just try to hold off Bortoleto and Verstappen. So their race is going to be very interesting to watch tomorrow. Speaking of Bortoleto, P7, great lap, 1:15, 7:25. He pushed really hard to get into Q3 and was pumped over the radio. I don't know if you heard it, but really impressive stuff from Gabriel Bortoleto. That qualifying performance of his just keeps shining through. Said that this was a very special weekend for him. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I never heard a driver really say something like that. And then he went into detail. He said it was special because, one of the worst starts to his weekends in F1 so far. But the team worked really hard Friday night to turn the car around and get it to where it could be somewhat drivable for him in free practice 3. He said he noticed the difference right away when he jumped into FP3, and then they made some extra changes heading into qualifying, and that kind of helped refine the car a bit more, and he could feel a huge difference just from Friday to Saturday. Friday, it sounded like they were lost, to Saturday, where they turned this thing upside down, and they were able to extract some performance, and all Gabriel Bortoleto needed to do were some good laps to get the car where it needed to be, focused, concentrated, put together what he needed to, and bam, P7. Great job from him. Max Verstappen, P8, 1:15, 7:28. Frustrating weekend for Max. They didn't find much overnight. So from Friday night to Saturday, FP3, they changed a lot in the car, but they just couldn't get a better balance out of it than what they already had. He was a little lost for words as to why, but honestly, Max didn't seem as upset as he has been in the past, especially this season. Have seen him pretty frustrated at the end of qualies this year, but so far this weekend, Max has been pretty calm, cool, and collected. I just wonder if the harmony within inside the team and maybe on his side of the garage is a little more calmed down now with Laurent Mekies there and Christian Horner out. But again, those are questions definitely going to have to ask him when I arrive at the Dutch Grand Prix at the end of August. P9 for Liam Lawson, 1:15, 8:2. Like, great job from Lawson. After what has been a difficult weekend for himself and for the team, he was happy to get into Q3. He wasn't happy with the lap he put down in Q3, but he said the conditions were really tricky, and I think essentially catching them off guard, where Isaac Hajar, P10, he made a mistake on his final push lap, went into the grass, said the car was actually felt quite nice the whole session, but again, conditions catching them out as well. Q2, Oliver Behrman with P11. Tough session for Ollie. He said that Q2 was extremely difficult with the conditions, with the rain that came down and the gusts of wind, and the changes in those track conditions really put him back on the back foot, essentially. But thought he did a really nice job because he just missed out on Q3, and in difficult conditions, he sounded pretty disappointed I get that. But it also sounds like very positive with this Haas trying to, they're trying to fight to get into Q3. I mean, that's it's always good news. Lewis Hamilton, P12. He was, oh man, he was devastated at the end of this one. He said in the post-quali pen that he was just useless and he just drove terribly, end quote. That's tough to hear from Lewis. I don't think that Lewis Hamilton is useless. I think he's being way too hard on himself. But again, P12, that is a tough position to bounce back from when you want to try and score some points on Sunday. However, the cars that are in front of him, I think Lewis is definitely faster than. He's just going to have to pick and choose his moments and opportunities to make some key overtakes so he can get himself in a good points paying position. But yeah, I felt that Lewis was way too hard on himself with that one. Carlos Sainz is right behind him in P13. For Carlos, he explained that they've reverted back to some of the old settings that they used to have on the car. They were basically throwing everything at it this weekend, so he felt like they maximized everything that they could from this Williams machine, and for Sunday, it could be a tough one for them. Franco Colapinto, good qualifying from Franco, P14, said he was feeling better with the car. This isn't a track that really suits the Alpine, but I think for Franco, starting to make some baby steps with the car, get the confidence back up. He said the car is feeling more consistent right now, and he was happy about that. Kimi Antonelli, a bit of a shocker, P15. I thought he was overdriving a little bit on his last push lap, but then when I heard him say that he had no rear end over the radio and the grip was gone, he explained that he was sliding as soon as he got into turn one. So I wonder if it was a tire prep issue with Kimi on his final push lap. He did have his lap time deleted, but he said his confidence was good, so he wasn't sure what was really going on. So I'd be curious to know if maybe didn't get the tire in the right operating window. Again, that's what rookies have to deal with. It's things you learn, right? So Q1, Yuki Tsunoda, P16, was only a 10th off of Max, though, in that one. And in the Q1, I should say. But for Yuki, felt that they struggled overall as a team. And he said that FP3, his preparation, or their preparation wasn't good, and that they missed quite a bit to set themselves up for a good qualifying. He said the car was sliding around way too much in Q1 during his push laps. Gasly's P17, Ocon P18, Hulkenberg P19, Alex Albon, shockingly, P20. Quite surprised, obviously, to see Alex that far back. He didn't think it was going to be that difficult of a session, so his out lap, he felt wasn't the greatest because he didn't get the tires into the right operating window. And when he arrived at turn ones to start his final push lap in Q1, he said the tires were just way too cold to start the lap. So it wasn't an ideal scenario for him in terms of setup. They actually went back to the FP1 car in terms of setup to see if he was happy with that. Race is going to be difficult for Alex starting that far back on Sunday. But, I mean, this race is going to be excellent. It's going to be really good. I'm really looking forward to it. And if it rains, I mean, that's just going to take things to a whole other level at this track in this Grand Prix. It's going to be a good send-off for all of us, actually, to see a great race before we get to summer break, which will happen the week after. So Adam and I are going to be back on Sunday night to record our post-race Hungarian Grand Prix. So we'll talk to you all then.